Sea of Zombies Note About Zombies Part 1 Clocktime. The story is fictional and created for this context. I was deeply hurt, I felt, betrayed by most of the people I knew, and the only thing that stood out in my mind when I wasn't treated. It was a cold thirst for revenge. Bad business at that moment. Everything has its time. I just wanted to get that intense shit. I wasn't very interested in following the news as it was my routine. I suppose that's why I took so long to bury myself of the supposed no importance race that originated in some distant country. The first thing I noticed was I heard without looking at the screen that the Minister of Health said that this malady would never reach this region. THECIRSTCASEWASTHECIENTERNATIONALAIRPORT. They said he was just a businessman. But they were more. And they said they were doing a medical follow-up of the rest of the passengers. It wasn't entirely right. Some of the passengers who showed no symptoms had already been dispatched to their destinations in different parts of the country. Nothing happens was the slogan. But he passed. Nothing happens. But passed. The nerve of expanding. Despite the government's attempts to minimize the situation, the truth became increasingly difficult to hide. Meanwhile, international airport passengers arriving at their destinations began to show symptoms. The disease spread rapidly, and soon, the whole country was in trouble. The slogan, "Nothing happens," became a joke. Reports of disappeared and infected people began to flood social networks and the media. The images of the rabies, with their glassy eyes and their erratic, violent and murderous behavior, and were discussed on the networks for the quality of the simulations and video stages where crazy people attacking like animals to those they had near. Those videos became viral and a common entertainment. Most did not take them seriously. There's nothing wrong. Even dealing with the ill's pain and betrayal, I couldn't ignore what was happening. Despite my desire to isolate myself from the world, I found myself dragged into chaos. I began to follow the news more closely, trying to understand the magnitude of the crisis. In Europe, the borders were closed. But they already had it inside. Russia was said to have everything under solid control. It was a solid lie. It was known that in the East they would cut for the healthy and in the name of the people would barricade whole areas in the style, land burned, no survivors. Africa was a kaleidoscope of chaos, order, efficiency, and darkness of unknown areas. In Arab countries, extremists blamed the West and Zion as if blaming others resolved the contagion. There was still talk of terrorism. That he was neither arrested nor palliated. North America had suspended travel with passengers, and with a National Guard, a system of hermetically closed counties had been established. Not working. The statistics of a large number of weapons, vehicles, and huge territories gave them a favorable degree of advantage. But at a per-hit cost. South America would lose connection quickly. You would know virtually nothing outside the satellite images. Their advantages would be given by geography. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't stay with my arms crossed. So, overcoming with my thirst for revenge and with determination, I decided to face the crisis. I didn't know how, but I was determined to fight. After all, I had nothing to lose. After all, I had nothing to lose. The rabies had become an epidemic. The rabies wandered through the streets, their faces a mask of fury and despair. The cities had become war zones, with barricades and armed patrols trying to keep the infected and the criminals in line. Many criminals. I, in the middle of all this, found a strange sense of purpose. The pain of the moral betrayal I had suffered had fueled my determination. I began to study the rabies, trying to understand its origin and how it spread. I spent hours on the web looking for any information that could help me fight the disease. I learned about the symptoms, the methods of organic fluid transmission, and the possible ways to treat the infected. Did you know that worked successfully? None. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to act. I started helping in the quarantine centers, using my skills to treat the sick and keep the angry on the line. In spite of the danger, or my danger, I felt more alive than ever. The fight against the rage was tough, and there were days when we seemed to be losing. But every time I managed to keep an angry man away from the healthy, I knew he was making a difference. And so, in the midst of the darkness, I found a way. Although the rage continued to spread and was far from finished, I was determined to move forward. After all, I had nothing to lose. The situation became even more complicated. Lack of food became a serious problem. Supermarkets were empty, farms abandoned, people struggled for surpluses, despair seized the streets. The corruption of the government became apparent. Promises of aid never arrived, and officials were more interested in protecting themselves than helping the population. Confidence in the government collapsed, and anarchy seized the country. Bands of armed criminals began to appear, taking advantage of the chaos to loot and steal. The streets were no longer safe, and people lived in constant fear. In the middle of all this, I met some unexpected allies. A former soldier, Charles, joined us. And Sophia, who showed courage and determination, a doctor who had been working on rabies treatments. The success of that was not going to be possible. The rabies were not endothermic, they did not record pulse, nor consciousness. Without consciousness, like many people we know. Zombies. In a group of survivors we form a team, determined to fight the rabies and to survive in this shit. Despite the blessed son of his most holy mother, despite the danger, we were determined to move forward. After all, it was the best option. Sophia, despite her age difference, was a source of light for my dark heart. His courage and determination has always been an inspiration for me, and delicious and sweet pair of round and turbulent eyes too. Despite everything that was happening, Sophia has always been able to find a reason to smile and move on. Our relationship started professionally, with me trying to protect her from the horrors. But over time, it became something else. Sophia became my motivation, my reason to fight, to survive. Despite the fact that it took him more than 20 years and the circumstances, we became inseparable. We spent hours together and a few nights. And then, looking for food, fighting the rabbits, or just talking about life before. Sophia constantly reminded me of what we were struggling to preserve our humanity. The relationship was complicated, full of fear and uncertainty, but also of love and respect. Despite everything, we were determined to face anything together. After all, we had nothing to lose. Sophia was a college student like any other before. He lived in the city. She was a brilliant student, always curious and eager to learn. She loved reading and wanted to dedicate herself as a writer. But everything changed when the chaos came. Their relatives became infected among the first cases. Sophia and her brother managed to escape, but were forced to leave everything behind. They wandered around the city, trying to survive. But one day, her brother also got sick. Sophia was forced to flee, leaving behind the only family she had left. He refused to surrender. He used his intelligence and courage to survive. He learned how to get food, avoid the angry, and stay safe. When I met her, Sophia had grown beyond her age. Despite her age, she had experienced more difficulties and losses than most people in her entire life. And in spite of everything, she was still strong, determined and full of hope. Sophia is a constant reminder of what we are struggling to preserve, our lives, humanity, a future. But despite everything he has lost, he keeps moving forward, demonstrating unbreakable courage and determination. Food and drinking water became increasingly difficult to find or negotiate. Medicines are scarce and virtually non-existent. Every day more complicated to find the resources needed to survive. In addition to the rabies, there are other dangers. Criminal gangs are a constant threat, as always, and there are animals that have also become more aggressive due to food shortages. Avoiding conflicts within the team was a constant challenge. Everyone with their own fears and traumas, and the tensions always under constant pressure. Had to make a decision. Despite a laptop with satellite connection in a hand, charged multi-band radio, the loss of connection with other parts of the world meant that we often had to deal with limited information. That made decision-making difficult and increased the feeling of isolation. The shortage of food and medicines made the search for these essential resources even more cumbersome, and the disruption of supply chains made many items extremely rare or valuable. The general instability led to an increase in violence and crime, which put us in even greater danger. Bands of armed criminals were a threat, especially if they found out that we had valuable resources. Hear about chaos and despair in other parts of the depressing era. Maintaining high morale is crucial for long-term survival. The situation affected our strategies. If we knew that certain areas were affected by the rabies, we could avoid them in our travel plans, or if we heard news from a safe place, we could always try to get there with a delicate and cautious exploration. But there was no longer time available. We had that truck ready and decently armored. It was time to look for better horizons.